Okay, this is Control Burn, chapter 25, the last chapter. The next morning, while my parents relaxed with their coffee, Grandpa offered to take me and Amelia out to the fire tower for a late fall hike and to help him close out the lookout for the season. He suggested that he drive us both out to the trail on Grandma's Buick, but that didn't feel right. I have a different idea, I began. You could take me and Bear out on the back of the motorcycle first, drop us off at the trail, and then come back for Amelia. Bear and I can hike the trail to the tower by ourselves, and we'll meet you up there. No, Mom called out from the living room where she had been obviously eavesdropping on conversations while pretending to read. Why not? I asked. Bear and I spent plenty of time in the woods alone this summer. I pointed out. We even rescued Grandpa from a forest fire, remember? She's right, Grandpa said. Maya will be fine out in the woods for 15 minutes while I come back into town to get her sister. Let the kid have her independence. She's a smart one. She's totally capable there in the woods. I could hear my parents conferring quietly together in the other room. Grandpa winked at me and then added loudly, I'll give her a compass just in case she gets lost. Maya doesn't know how to use a compass, Dad laughed. And Grandpa called out, You have no idea how much she knows. He and I shared a smile. Okay, Mom said finally. If Maya is okay with it, we are too. Grandma packed us a picnic even though we had just had breakfast. You might get hungry, she said. I muttered to Grandpa, That's what all the spam is for, right? She shows her love with food, Grandpa told me with a shrug. That's why I've gotten 3 years worth of emergency canned food hidden in the tower. She never let a day go by where I head out there without a whole day's worth of meals to keep me from starving to death. It felt like coming home. To get back on Grandpa's motorcycle again, with Bear in this little sidecar next to me, we rode to the tower path, blasting the music of Boxcar Willie. I sang along to the familiar songs, wondering what Amelia would think of Grandpa's music. Knowing my sister, she'd probably want to download a bunch of country songs onto my phone after this trip. When we got out to the trail, Bear and I hopped out. With a quick wave, Grandpa turned the cycle around and zoomed out away again, leaving me and Bear alone in the woods. Our woods. I reached down and rubbed the soft fur between the shoulder blades, and then together we set up off the trail. As I hiked, I let my mind wander to the last time Big Bear and I had been out here together, leading and supporting an injured Grandpa Howard out of the woods before the fire could catch us. Looking back with the information only hindsight can bring, we had never really been in a huge amount of danger that day. The fire had never burned as far as the trail. But if the winds had shifted, our story could have easily ended differently. The thing I learned from Grandpa that summer, though, is that you can't control the things that are out of your power. You only have the power to control how you react to them. I was trying hard to stop dwelling on the what-ifs in every scary situation, and instead to challenge myself to face my fears using some of the techniques I had been working on in therapy since I had gone home to Chicago. Hey, buddy, I said breathlessly to Big Bear as we hiked. I really missed you, you know? I was trying to stay calm and cool as we hiked up the tower together. Even though this walk wasn't an easy one, it brought back a whole flood of memories and feelings. But most of the strategies my new therapist had recommended was to acknowledge my fears and emotions, let them flare up and be noticed, instead of trying to tamp them down and pretend they didn't exist. Sometimes she told me you had to face a fear and let it take hold of you in order to fight it. I stopped for a quiet rest, realizing I had gotten a little out of shape now that I wasn't hiking up this trail every day. Bear stopped and looked at me, waiting, his tongue hanging out of his mouth as I sat on the fallen log. I was using as a bench. I thought of some of the stuff I'd slowly been coming to terms with. Maybe I could have been quicker to pull my sister from the blaze, but I also could have frozen up entirely. Could have waited too long and then been locked out of her room by a wall of fire. Could have run from the house to save myself and left my sister to die. Considering the alternatives, I'm glad things ended the way they did. I made the best possible choice in a bad situation, and no amount of second guessing was going to alter the outcome. I hopped to my feet, and we started up the trail again. Soon the fire tower came into view. It loomed over me, equal parts frightening and familiar. I'd only been inside the little hut perched at the very top of the stairs once, the day of the fire. Since then, I wondered many times what would happen the next time I visited Thistledew. Suddenly, I knew exactly what needed to happen. Without giving myself time to chicken out, I headed straight for the bottom of the stairs and placed my foot on the first step. Then I began to climb, one foot in front of the other, until I reached the first stair landing. Bear followed and stayed a step or two behind, as if he'd been preparing to catch me if I fell. I wouldn't fall. I climbed the second set of steps, then the third, stopping to breathe whenever I felt my chest tighten. The farther I climbed, the freer I felt. The crisp, cool autumn wind whipped around me. When I took a break on the final stair landing, the door that led into the little shelter at the top came into my sights ahead of me. I didn't take time to look around at the views. Not yet. I needed to just keep climbing, one step at a time. At the top, fingers trembling, I reached out and pushed the wooden door into the little lookout shelter open. Then I stepped inside. Bear raced into the space after me, immediately settling into a snuggly dog bed that Grandpa had obviously brought up here for him at some point after I left to go home. I smiled, thinking that the two of them sitting up here together, keeping each other company on top of the world. The lookout shelter was nearly empty. The only furniture inside was Bear's bed, the two folding chairs, one for Grandpa, and I suspected one for me. I had a feeling at some point Grandpa had dragged the chair up all these stairs for me this summer, just in case I ever came up to spend my time at the top with him. Cans of Spam lined the walls like a weird wallpaper or art installation. There was a small wooden ledge stacked with maps and a radio I used to call in the smoke that day, as well as a few unfamiliar tools and gadgets. But the most impressive part of the tower was how much I could see from all the way up here, a full 360-degree bird's eye view of the forest. I stood in the center of the shelter and spun, gazing out the windows, taking it all in. To the west, evergreen trees intermingled with birch and maple trees that had lost all but the most stubborn of their leaves for the winter. To the east, I had perfect outlook over the part of the forest that had been burned. In time, I knew the trees would grow back and life would return. As I gazed out the two sides of the forest, both past and future spread out around me, I suddenly heard someone calling my name. I stepped closer to the edge of the shelter and peered out. My breath hitched when I looked down and realized for the first time exactly how far I had climbed. My sister and Grandpa were at the base of the tower, and they were both calling for me. I slid open the window and waved. "Up here," I yelled. Even from the distance, I could see the surprise on Grandpa's face, and then he smiled. "Crack a can of Spam. We'll be right up."